Psychological and social cultural factors in aggression. What psychological factors may trigger aggressive behavior? Biological factors influence the ease with which aggression is triggered. But what psychological factors pull the trigger? Aversive events. Although suffering sometimes builds character, it may also bring out the worst in us. Studies in which animals or humans experience unpleasant events reveal that those made miserable often make others miserable. Berkowitz, 1983, 1989. Being blocked short of a goal also increases people's readiness to aggress. This phenomenon is called the frustration-aggression principle. Frustration creates anger, which may in some people generate aggression, especially in the presence of an aggressive cue, such as a gun. One analysis of 27,667 hit-by-pitch Major League Baseball incidents between 1960 and 2004 found pitchers were most likely to hit batters when frustrated by the previous batters hitting a home run, by the current batters hitting a home run the last time at bat, or by a teammates having been hit by a pitch in the previous half inning. Timmerman, 2007. Recall that organisms often respond to stress with a fight or flight reaction. After the frustration and stress of 9/11, Americans responded with a readiness to fight. Terrorism similarly may spring from a desire for revenge, sometimes after a friend or family member has been killed or injured. Contrary to the popular idea that poverty breeds terrorists, suicide bombers and those who support them actually tend to be neither uneducated nor desperately poor. Kruger, 2007. The 9/11 suicide bombers, for example, were mostly educated men from wealthy Saudi Arabia. McDermott, 2005. Frustration and aggression arise less from deprivation than from the gap between reality and expectations, which may rise with education and attainments. Like frustration, other aversive stimuli, physical pain, personal insults, foul odors, hot temperatures, cigarette smoke, and a host of others can also evoke hostility. For example, violent crime and spousal abuse rates are higher during hotter years, seasons, months, and days. Figure 14.10. When people get overheated, they think, feel, and act more aggressively. From the available data, Craig Anderson and his colleagues in 2000 have projected that, other things being equal, global warming of 4 degrees Fahrenheit, about 2 degrees centigrade, would induce more than 50,000 additional assaults and murders in the United States alone. Social and cultural influences. Aggression may be a natural response to aversive events, but learning can alter natural reactions. Animals naturally eat when they are hungry, but if appropriately rewarded or punished, they can be taught either to overeat or to starve. Our reactions are more likely to be aggressive in situations where experience has taught us that aggression pays. Children whose aggression successfully intimidates other children may become more aggressive. Animals that have successfully fought to get food or mates become increasingly ferocious. Ostracism, as we noted in Unit 8A, can also be a real pain. In a series of studies, Jean Twenge and her collaborators, 2001, 2002, 2003, told some people that others whom they had met didn't want them in their group, or that a personality test indicated they were likely to end up alone later in life. People led to feel socially excluded were later more likely to disparage or even deliver a blast of noise to someone who insulted them. This rejection-induced aggression brings to mind various North American and European school shootings committed by youths who had been shunned, mocked, and sometimes bullied by peers, as reportedly was also the case in 2007 with Virginia Tech mass murderer Sung-Ho Cho. Other studies confirm that rejection often intensifies aggression. Catanese and Tice, 2005, Gaitner and Izuni, 2005. Different cultures model, reinforce, and evoke different tendencies toward violence. For example, crime rates are higher and average happiness is lower in countries marked by a great disparity between rich and poor. Triandis, 1994. Richard Nisbet and Dov Cohen, 1996, have shown how violence can vary by culture within a country. They analyzed violence among white Americans in southern towns settled by Scots-Irish herders whose tradition emphasized manly honor, the use of arms to protect one's flock, and a history of coercive slavery. Their cultural descendants, Nisbet and Cohen found, have triple the homicide rates and are more supportive of physically punishing children, of warfare initiatives, and of uncontrolled gun ownership than are their white counterparts in New England towns settled by the more traditionally peaceful Puritan, Quaker, and Dutch farmer artisans. Social influence also appears in high violence rates among cultures and families that experience minimal father care. Triandis, 1994. Even after controlling for parental education, race, income, and teen motherhood, American male youths from father-absent homes have double their peers' incarceration rate. Harper and McClanahan, 2004. It is important, however, to note how many people are leading gentle, even heroic lives amid social stresses, reminding us again that individuals differ. The person matters. That people differ over time and place reminds us that environments also differ and situations matter. Yesterday's plundering Vikings have become today's peace-promoting Scandinavians. Like all behavior, aggression arises from the interaction of persons and situations. Why do we kill people who kill people to show that killing people is wrong? National Coalition to Abolish the Death Penalty, 1992. Once established, however, aggressive behavior patterns are difficult to change. To foster a kinder, gentler world, we had best model and reward sensitivity and cooperation from an early age, perhaps by training parents to discipline without modeling violence. Modeling violence, screaming and hitting, is precisely what exasperated parents often do. Parents of delinquent youngsters typically discipline with beatings, thus modeling aggression as a method of dealing with problems. Patterson et al., 1982-1992. They also frequently cave in to reward their children's tears and temper tantrums. Parent training programs advise a more positive approach. They encourage parents to reinforce desirable behaviors and to frame statements positively. When you finish loading the dishwasher, you can go play, rather than, if you don't load the dishwasher, there'll be no playing. One aggression replacement program has brought down rearrest rates of juvenile offenders and gang members by teaching the youths and their parents communication skills, training them to control anger, and encouraging more thoughtful moral reasoning. Goldstein et al., 1998. Observing models of aggression. Parents are hardly the only aggression models. As we noted in Unit 6, observing TV violence tends to desensitize people to cruelty and prime them to respond aggressively when provoked. Does this media effect extend to sexual violence? We do know that sexually coercive men typically are sexually promiscuous and hostile in their relationships with women. Figure 14.11. We also know from surveys of American and Australian teens and university students that viewing X-rated films and internet pornography is several times higher among males than among females. Carroll et al., 2008, Flood, 2007, Woloch et al., 2007. Might sexually explicit media models contribute to sexually aggressive tendencies? Content analyses reveal that most X-rated films have depicted quick, casual sex between strangers, but that scenes of rape and sexual exploitation of women by men are also common. Cowan et al., 1988, NCTV, 1987, Yang and Lins, 1990. Rape scenes often portray the victim at first fleeing and resisting her attacker, but then becoming aroused and finally driven to ecstasy. In less graphic form, the same unrealistic script, she resists, he persists, she melts, is commonplace on TV and in romance novels. In Gone with the Wind, Scarlett O'Hara is carried to bed screaming and wakes up singing. Most rapists accept this rape myth, the idea that some women invite or enjoy rape and get swept away while being taken. Brinson, 1992. In actuality, rape is traumatic and it frequently harms women's reproductive and psychological health. Golding, 1996. Compared with those who watch little television, men and women who watch a great deal are more likely to accept the rape myth. Kaler and Morrison, 2007. When interviewed, Canadian and U.S. sex offenders, rapists, child molesters, and serial killers report a greater than usual appetite for sexually explicit and sexually violent materials typically labeled as pornography. Marshall, 1989, Odone Paolucci et al., 2000, Ressler et al., 1988. For example, the Los Angeles Police Department has reported that pornography was conspicuously present in 62% of its extrafamilial childhood sexual abuse cases during the 1980s. Bennett, 1991. High pornography consumption also has predicted greater sexual aggressiveness among university men, even after controlling for other predictors of antisocial behavior. Vega and Malamuth, 2007. But are the sexual aggressors merely, as sex researcher John Money, 1988, suspected, using pornography as an alibi to explain to themselves and their captors what otherwise is inexplicable? Laboratory experiments reveal that repeatedly watching X-rated films, even if non-violent, later makes one's own partner seem less attractive, makes a woman's friendliness seem more sexual, and makes sexual aggression seem less serious. Harris, 1994. In one such experiment, Dolph Zillman and Jennings Bryant, 1984, showed undergraduates 6 brief, sexually explicit films each week for 6 weeks. A control group viewed non-erotic films during the same 6-week period. 3 weeks later, both groups read a newspaper report about a man convicted but not yet sentenced for raping a hitchhiker. When asked to suggest an appropriate prison term, those who had viewed sexually explicit films recommended sentences half as long as those recommended by the control group. Experiments cannot elicit actual sexual violence, but they can assess a man's willingness to hurt a woman. Often the research gauges the effect of violent versus non-violent erotic films on men's willingness to deliver supposed electric shocks to women who had earlier provoked the men. These experiments suggest that it's not the eroticism, but rather the depictions of sexual violence, whether in R-rated slasher films or X-rated films, that most directly affect men's acceptance and performance of aggression against women. A conference of 21 social scientists, including many of the researchers who conducted these experiments, produced a consensus, Surgeon General, 1986. Pornography that portrays sexual aggression as pleasurable for the victim increases the acceptance of the use of coercion in sexual relations. Contrary to much popular opinion, viewing such depictions does not provide an outlet for bottled-up impulses. Rather, in laboratory studies measuring short-term effects, exposure to violent pornography increases punitive behavior toward women. Sidebar. In follow-up studies, Zillman, 1989, found that after massive exposure to X-rated sexual films, men and women became more accepting of extramarital sex, of women's sexual submission to men, and of a man seducing a 12-year-old girl. As people heavily exposed to televised crime perceive the world as more dangerous, so people heavily exposed to pornography see the world as more sexual. Acquiring social scripts. Significant behaviors, such as violence, usually have many determinants, making any single explanation an oversimplification. Asking what causes violence is therefore like asking what causes cancer. Those who study the effects of asbestos exposure on cancer rates may remind us that asbestos is indeed a cancer cause, albeit only one among many. Likewise, report Neil Malamuth and his colleagues, 1990.